Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you are here. Welcome to this full moon forecast where we're going to look at the main astrological themes as we do on the new and full moons of the upcoming full moon in the sign of Sagittarius on the 11th of June, the 2 weeks following up to the next new moon, which will be on the 25th of June 2025. So we are talking about Western or tropical astrology. Always important to make the distinction so that we know what context we're operating within. So welcome back, everyone. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate all of you so much. If you would please take the time, if you like and value this content, to hit that like button and certainly subscribe if you're not already subscribed, and commenting, sharing the link to the video always helps as well. I would really appreciate that. So we have so much to talk about. Not the least of which is the most recent public distraction that has just dropped as of the last day with this feud between Elon Musk and Donald Trump. And everybody's got their opinion. There are a number of perspectives rolling around out there on the interwebs about this. And really, the only reason I'm even bringing it up, because it's such a clickbait, it's just a cash cow right now, I would say, for the influencer sphere, because it's so public and it's so back and forth. And wow, if it does not exemplify some Gemini energy, I don't know what else does. The reason I'm bringing it up, and we're going to use this as a prime, brilliant learning, teaching tool for this upcoming full moon, is because it is so woven into the charts of these two individuals. And so stay tuned, because we're going to get into it, and it's just so beautifully dovetails into the upcoming full moon in Sagittarius and everything that's going to be transpiring over the next 2 weeks. So we do have the solstice as part of the next 2 weeks, and I will say, I want to get my promotional stuff out of the way. So if you are interested in your own personalized forecast, I'm going to let you know now that those are available for booking on my website. You can get to my website in the description box below. There's a link there, and you can go there. You go and go to the store, and you'll find the flyer for the 2025 solstice report. It's $88. We look at your natal chart, your progressions, your starseed markings, if you have them, and it's very comprehensive about what to expect in terms of your personal journey over the next 3 months, right? This is a quarterly check-in and an astrological forecast. So that is definitely part of this next 2 weeks. We are going to touch very briefly on the solstice. It's really just about the Cancer energy in general, which is very much wrapped up in this next 2 weeks, because it's not just the solstice, but Jupiter's coming into Cancer, Mercury's coming into Cancer as well. And if you have been here for a while, and certainly if you have listened to the eclipse forecast, or you had your own personal eclipse forecast, then since March, we've been talking about, wow, June is going to be where things really start to get wonky. And that is certainly presenting itself right now. We're going to get deeper into the charts and really unpack the charts about this feud between these two very public figures. Look at the ways that the upcoming full moon is so brilliantly. I couldn't have planned it better myself. And if I have to be honest, I don't think this is a staged operation. I know that that's something that is making its way out there in the influencer sphere. And honestly, I wouldn't even be bringing this up if it wasn't so blatantly connected to the energies of the full moon directly in the chart. So we're going to get into that. But I do feel like that what we're seeing right now is the manifestation of the energetic template that is operating at this time, which is certainly influenced very strongly by the transiting astrology. So I personally don't think that they're staging this within themselves. I think, as I just said, it's a manifestation of what is energetically happening right now. I do feel like ultimately there is going to be some very positive renewal and resolution that comes out of this, but we have to go through this process of this Gemini energy. Like this feud, if it doesn't exemplify the Gemini archetype, I really don't know what does. So we're really going to get into it. And the Gemini energy is coming in super hot, and I can barely contain myself in terms of getting this forecast out. So we'll see what comes through. And of course, we're going to look at, the main transits over the next 2 weeks. So if you are interested in your own personal forecast, because the eclipse cycle is definitely a 6-month cycle. And so the seasonal forecasts are like a quarterly check-in. So we're halfway through that cycle. And, it's good to just kind of get an idea of like how the upcoming transits, especially how big they are going to impact, you and what kind of potentials are around the corner. So you can go to website. It's in the description box below. If you are part of the Catalyst membership and signed up for that, you can utilize your dedicated discount code and gets a percentage off of that forecast. Now, there's a limited supply. I will say that because it is time-based. So there's only so many that I am able to do leading up to the solstice. There will be a generalized seasonal forecast that is going to be released before the solstice to Catalyst members. And eventually, as we get to the time of the solstice, it will be released publicly. So there will be something to stay tuned for in terms of the solstice. So if you're interested in Catalyst membership, actually, this is a great segue into the reading I just did. You can also go to the description box below, and there is a link to go sign up. There is a multiple tier system based on how much you are contributing. And the main benefit, besides having a percentage discount on all my services, is an energy reading once or twice a month, depending on which tier you're signed up for. And for those of you who recently received the energy reading that I did last week, wow, I had no idea that I was reading for this situation that is happening right now. We knew that we were reading for the upcoming full moon. It was pretty much spelled out in the reading. It was a really great, giving myself a little adjustment here. My spine has certainly been kind of all over the place. We knew that it was definitely a reading for the upcoming full moon. It was pretty spelled out. And if you remember, for those of you who got the reading, I'm just kind of, I love the fact that I'm still blown away by sometimes the accuracy of the intuitive readings that I do. And I think that that's a good thing, because once you start not being just in awe and wonder of, the intuitive nature of all of us, then, it's not any fun anymore. And you're not actually trusting and opening up to the guidance of the universe and of Source and of God. So I'm still kind of blown away by it as well. I had no idea it was going to unfold the way it did. But for those of you, and please verify this in the comments if you listened to the reading already. One of the things I said, the heart of the matter, and I was just like, if this card is not the representation of a petulant child, I don't know what is. And boy, that energy is certainly very present right now, again, with this kind of feud. So just remarkable, honestly. So if you're interested in getting an energetic and intuitive reading with the cards as an addendum, as a supplement to these astrological forecasts, you want to support this work, you want to support the channel, membership really does help cover the administrative costs. I do have a day job in the healing arts, so it's not like I need to be clickbait in this role in order to sustain myself. But membership does support the administrative costs, right? Domain and website, the subscription to send out emails to the list, right? I have an internet bill, I have a power bill in order to be able to do these things. I would love to upgrade some of my equipment. So that's what your membership contribution would support, and then you get those benefits. I am considering adding one more benefit to the premium tier, which is $9 a month, and that's a personal mini read every month as well. And I think that's really valuable because it's very personalized. We take into account your chart. and pull some cards and just, it's a good monthly check-in. So I'm considering that as well. So you may want to, if that's something that really speaks to you, perhaps you want to sign up for the premium membership. So with all of that being said, let's get into all of this. Okay. So let's kind of, I don't want to say backtrack necessarily. Let's just kind of settle into where things are right now and where they are coming out of. So one thing that I'd like to, and this is probably not news, right, to anybody because it even made the mainstream news, and more of the solar weather stuff is definitely making the mainstream news, which I think is really interesting. But as you can see here, we just came out of a pretty significant solar storm over the last couple of days, right? It was substantial. Now, I personally didn't feel too much physical backlash. I'm not saying that people didn't or shouldn't. I'm just saying that I personally don't get as much of a physical backlash or response to the solar weather when it's just the solar weather, right? And maybe that's because I have put so much energy and time and my regular routine into the my energetic field, right? My biofield, right? So much of what I do on a regular basis is keeping that healthy, keeping that sustained, right? And we all have different challenges and different assets in that department that we can focus on. So I don't often get a lot of really strong physical effects, even though I know that there are physical effects that can come from these strong solar storms. And we did. We had some really strong, and you can see we were up in the KP 6, 7, maybe even 8 area, and this is on the 1st, right? And so now it's starting to settle down, and as of today, it's really coming back down to a baseline. So what I think is really, so that in itself, has made all kinds of, has really perturbed some things on some level, right? Has increased, I mean, the solar wind speed was incredibly fast, right? You're looking at 1,000 kilometers per second. Now, the thing that was interesting too, there wasn't a lot of density, right? There wasn't a lot of density of plasma or particles. It was just really, really fast. So maybe that's why there weren't as many physical symptoms present. What I found really interesting is what's happening right now with the Schumann. So let me bring that up as well. So it really wasn't doing much during that time. And again, it may be because it was not very dense, right? There weren't a lot of particles that were coming into the ionosphere and bouncing around. So you did find that there were, these spikes and pops of the amplitude, right? And what's the amplitude? It's the volume, right? You turn the dial up and you get this swell, or you get, in some cases it was like a really just kind of sharp pop, but it wasn't necessarily a big swell. Well, so now that the solar weather has calmed down and it's not that fast and it's not that dense, and we haven't gotten a big flare, and yes, there is a coronal hole that's facing us, but that was the case before, which is why we got this massive solar storm as well. But what I did notice was that today and last night, we got a really big swell in the Schumann, as you can see here, right? And so it's a large amplitude, and it's very sizable, okay? And so my guess, and based on my personal experience, is now this is, you're looking at the time in Russia at the station that this particular graph is picking up on these changes, right? And so you're looking at the afternoon, so you're looking more in the middle of the night, okay? And you can even see right here, the day before, there was definitely a little bit of a spike or a pop, but it was a big swell. East Coast Standard Time, you're looking at 1, 2, 3 a.m. Okay. Now, before that happened, I will say that I had a lot of very sudden physical symptoms, a lot of nausea, really uncomfortable, which I had none of that stuff during the actual solar storm itself. Now, does that, I I'm only giving you the data that I'm seeing and my observations of my own personal experience. And that's the best thing we can do is take our personal experience and apply it to any data that we are able to collect and interact with. I think it's very interesting that now we get this swell in the Schumann, especially with all of this kind of public distraction energy happening. So, you know, ascension symptoms aside or not, you know what I mean? Everybody's got their opinion about what this means as well. I personally, I'm not sure. I am not of the opinion that this represents some sort of, swell or expansion in consciousness. I have a feeling that this is more of using the extremely low frequency that is the Schumann resonance as a carrier wave for something else. And then you see all of these things kind of explode out into the public realm. But I don't know that for sure. That's just my opinion about the matter. I think it's really interesting that, there was a little bit of activity, leading up to this point and during the solar storm, but it's only now that it's calmed down that we see this big swell. So who knows? I don't think anybody really actually knows. And maybe there's a handful of people on this planet that actually know what's going on. But we can, like I said, we can take our personal experiences, our observations, and apply it to the data that we are collecting and come to our own conclusions and leave it open-ended, right? I mean, new data come in all the time that allow us to upgrade our conclusions, right? To create or synthesize new information into a different understanding, right? That's a very Sagittarius thing, by the way, speaking of Sagittarius and the upcoming full moon. So I just wanted to bring that up as we come into this moment here and knowing what exactly is going on. So let me close those things out, okay? So Gemini energy coming in hot. So let's look at the chart for right now and just kind of ground ourselves into what's happening. Here, let me share the screen here. All right. Okay, friends, here we are. Today is the 6th of June. Like I said, the full moon itself is going to be on the 11th of June. We will be looking at President Trump's natal chart, which we do have his birth time, so it's very accurate. We're also going to be looking at Elon Musk's natal chart. Now, I personally don't have access and I have not been able to find his birth time, so we can't know for sure what his moon sign and degree is, although we can kind of guess based on the day that he's probably a Virgo moon, which is interesting because we are still in a first quarter moon phase that had the moon in Virgo. So I think that that's very connected to everything that's happening right now and the energy of that first quarter moon. Again, there's that petulance. Oh my gosh. Anyway, so the moon now is in Libra. It's going to be coming into Scorpio. It's going to be meeting Black Moon Lilith, the true or oscillating Lilith, also in Scorpio. So the intensity is about to come online when you have a moon in Scorpio. So we don't, like I said, we don't have the birth time, so we can't see what houses everything is in for Elon Musk. There is a field of astrology. There is a technique called rectification, and I personally have not really delved into that. I think that would be definitely something I would love. Honestly, I would love to, seclude myself in a yurt for like 2 weeks and really dive into more of the minutia of the technical aspects of the astrology, because I would love to do that. But the reality is that my primary tool is as a healer, right? And astrology is also a primary tool for me as I am a starseed coach and I am a reader, and all of those things do factor into being a healer and an intuitive healer at that. But like I said, the the primary tool that I have, and that is part of my day job, and it is in a mainstream environment, but it very much is an energetic and hands-on healing modality. So it's not like I necessarily have the time to dedicate to being solely an astrologer. So much of my astrology work is something that I am remembering from some other lifetime or some other part of my higher self has come in and turned on at one point. I mean, if you go back and look at my progressions, it probably is actually really obvious when that happened. Something turned on, and then I have this capacity that really helps read the map, right? Read the temporal map. So anyway, the point I'm trying to make is rectification is something that there are other astrologers who probably are very skilled at that and have been able to identify where Elon Musk's ascendant is based on his birth time, but I don't have access to that. So we're only going to be looking at, the planetary positions and the signs they're in and the degrees they're in. And we can kind of guess that he's probably a Virgo moon based on his birth day and it could be anywhere based on that 24-hour period. So we're going to take a look at that. But for now, I really want to look at the chart for the current situation, because we're still in our first quarter moon phase, and then we're going to start looking into the next 2 weeks, and then we're really going to wrap it up by looking at those 2 natal charts and showing you, how, just brilliantly, like I said, it's all woven together. And earlier I said that in my personal opinion, I don't think this is like a staged operation in order to bring out, information, like force it to the issue. But do I think that it is staged by the cosmos? Do I think that all of this is part of the divine plan? Absolutely. Like, clearly God has a plan, and it is brilliant all the time. And this is one of those moments when you're like, whoa, if you just know how to read the temporal map of astrology, you can be like, what? Wow, look at how this is playing out. So ultimately, when we get into those charts, I will say that as turbulent as it is right now, and certainly it is going to be tumultuous, and that is the energy of the sun when we get to the full moon period. Like, it is definitely tumultuous, and it's just building right now. As much as that is the case, this is a really important period that we all have to go through in our own personal lives, and just to use, even if it's not affecting us personally, or we don't have that Gemini dichotomy that is creating contention in our own personal lives, we can still utilize the situation that we're at least seeing, and maybe we're in a position where it is like a movie, right? We're just watching the narrative unfold here. Regardless, it's an opportunity to really lean into this Gemini energy before we get into all the Cancer energy, where you literally plant your flag, right? I mean, you have all this time with Gemini to go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And once we start getting into Cancer, this is where the root system is established. And then there is no back and forth. It is just expansion downwards into the core, right? The root system is what stabilizes us to a foundation. But until we get to that point, it is a movement back and forth here. And with, as you can see in the chart here, with let me just move this over here. With Mercury in its home sign of Gemini, with Jupiter about to come out of Gemini into Cancer, which, by the way, it's exalted in Cancer. Jupiter's exalted in Cancer, so it's going to be very expansive, and a lot of big picture energy around those Cancer themes. But also we have the Sun coming into the second half of Gemini, right? It's actually conjunct the star Regulus, which is in the Orion constellation. Well, it's technically an asterism, but we're not going to get too much into the details about that. But for you astro nerds out there, you know what I'm talking about, right? There's a difference between an asterism and an actual constellation. But the Sun is even at Regulus, right? This is the front foot of the Orion constellation. So there is a lot of forward momentum energy with the star Regulus and having the sun here. So this Gemini energy is very strong. And Jupiter at this very last degree suggests here that we are at a moment of decision, right? The hour of decision is here, right? The show is over. The hour of decision has come. And when Jupiter comes into Cancer, this social wealth and this sense of real understanding in terms of where our foundation truly is, where our loyalties lie, where we feel safe and secure and at home, is going to start being not only established, but it's going to start expanding, right? And we got to know where we sit. You know, we gotta be very aware of where we're planting our flag, so to speak, in order for Jupiter to start really expanding in that direction. Now, of course, as we talked about in the eclipse forecast in March for this time period, all of that Cancer energy is in a square to Saturn and Neptune in Aries, right? Now, they will be conjunct in 2026 exactly. So they are going to retrograde this summer. Saturn's going to move back into Pisces. And so they're just dipping their toes into this brand new desire and potentiality here at a collective level, at a spiritual level. And of course, with Saturn, we're talking about power, right? When we're talking about authority, right? Saturn in Aries definitely gives me a vibe of the four in the tarot, the Emperor, right? But it's not fully consummated just yet. We have some time to go before these two are conjunct. But it's squaring all of this Cancer energy. And what I talked about in the eclipse forecast was that it will test our foundational support. It will give us a chance to really sink into those root systems, and if they, in fact, are able to withstand that friction with Saturn and Neptune, which are much larger energies having to do with power structures and power dynamics, and certainly with Neptune, spiritual and humanitarian themes as well. So here we are at this Gemini, all this Gemini energy. So let's start looking at the actual full moon itself. So I'm going to bring that up real quick, and we're going to start going through these astrological themes. Now, there are big energies happening over the next 2 weeks. And if you just remember the new moon that we had that started this whole lunar cycle, which was in Gemini, right? It was the well with the bucket and the rope, and it's under the big tree, right? And this idea that there is a cooperation, there is a fundamental faith and a trust in life to provide what we need, but there is the work we have to put in. And Gemini is, yes, it's a mutable sign, but that Gemini energy and the third house in astrology, there is movement there, right? It's like the wind, you know what I mean? Yes, it's mutable. Yes, it can shift at any point, but there is movement. There is a back and forth, and there is this constant vacillation with Gemini. And there is a need to actually engage in that activity. Just like if you need the water from the well, which is a very Cancerian thing. Oh boy, I'm getting a big hit on this. It's not enough to just have the well. You actually have to do the work in order to gather the life-sustaining waters from the well. And that's what this Gemini energy is. And yes, it's like I said, it's tumultuous, right? There's no static energy here. We kind of have to deal with every single antithesis and source of contention with any idea, with any relationship. Whatever we're doing, there will be an antithesis. And the Orion starseed energy is so perfectly conditioned for this, because you take your emotions out of it and you apply rationality and reason and logic, and you move back and forth between both situations. And sometimes it can be kind of explosive and tumultuous. And there's nothing wrong with that as long as there is a focus on renewal as the primary goal, and a sense of loyalty, and a sense of belonging, and a sense of really rooting ourselves in a foundation of love and respect and belonging, which are all these Cancer energies. As an aside, as we're going to come into Cancer season with the June solstice, I will say that yes, the water energies can be tricky. And oftentimes the sign of Scorpio gets the attention of like the intense, dark sign of Scorpio. It's intense. It has to do with death and rebirth and sexual energy and the shadow and all that stuff. And yes, that is very intense. I think Cancer, I think that the negative aspect of the Cancer energy is not focused on enough. And, no disrespect to any Cancer energy, as we're going to see, because Elon Musk is a Sun and Mercury in Cancer. And yes, President Trump has Cancer in his chart too. Actually, they both have Mercury in Cancer, but only one of them is a Mercury ruled person. And you can guess which one maybe that is, right? And the other one, and which is not President Trump. It's Elon Musk. He's got a sun in Cancer, which means he's ruled by the moon, right? He is ruled by his feelings, and those can be very intense. And anybody who is a sun, moon, and rising in Cancer knows that they are often moved a lot by their moods, right? And if you don't have that perspective of how intense that is, and those feelings are not, how do I say this? If those feelings are not, through a proper lens, so to speak, or you don't have the means to put them to work with dedication and patience, which is a Virgo energy, by the way, then it can be very, let's just say that Cancer in the fourth house is really where personality disorders take root, especially things like narcissism. It is expressed in the fifth house, I think, right? With this, this kind of conceit and this idea that, that we're the center of everything. If true narcissism, not just throwing this word around because you don't like somebody, or the fact that they have confidence and they are willing to express that, right? True narcissism as a personality disorder really takes root quite literally in the fourth house, because it's the mother wound. And there is a darkness there that I think is really underrated. I don't think people really focus that much on the dark side of the Cancer energy. And I think maybe I think it's going to be worth it to consider that coming up into Cancer season. Anyway. And we can talk more about that as we go along. And I'm very curious to see how the energy readings will continue to show up. Because, like I said, the connection to the full moon, and now looking at it in this public feud is just, I'm still in awe of it. Wow. Whew. Anyway, so what am I doing? Oh, yeah, we're looking at the full moon. Sorry, guys. The Gemini energy is definitely on top of me. There is no doubt about that. Okay. So the 11th of June is when we have our full moon. And you can see even the way that things are shown in the chart itself, right? The lines are getting bolder as we get closer to this full moon and beyond. So the moon in Sagittarius opposite the sun in Gemini, tumultuous, absolutely. And beyond that, we're going to see the moon come in a T-square with her own nodal axis as well. So let's bring this up exactly so we can see the fullness, and especially if you are a visual person. There we go. Here is our full moon. And you can also see that Mars and Chiron will be in a sextile. Put a pin in that one, especially where Mars is right now. That's going to be very related to one of the charts we're going to look at. And then, of course, you see that Jupiter is newly into Cancer. Mercury is newly into Cancer. And in fact, Mercury is sitting at the degree that the next new moon is going to be at. So I would really pay attention to a lot of the emotional aspects of this full moon, and certainly where your mind is, because that's going to say a lot about and give you some real good insight, I think, on ultimately what type of seeds of intention you want to set for yourself when we get to the new moon at the end of June. Because if you think June is nuts, wait till you see July. Again, this is why the upcoming solstice forecast is going to be really important at a personal level, and certainly getting a heads up on it at a collective level. Again, that's why maybe you want to consider membership. I don't know, to get that forecast ahead of time, so you really see what's coming. But tumultuous labor demonstration. That is the degree of the full moon, okay? And that is a pretty self-explanatory image, right? And there is a revolutionary impact of concepts upon the emotions and the desires of the people involved, right? There is a need to change something that feels unfair, right? And so the idea that it's tumultuous is, just part of like quickly shifting perspectives or the balance of power, right? And there's a justification here, because we're talking about the labor demonstration, right? The union, for instance, right? Workers going on strike, demanding a fair wage or demanding to be compensated fairly for what's being done, right? And when something like this happens, right, it is tumultuous because you are demanding that there is a shift in the power dynamics. So the benefit of this situation, even it's tumultuous, is that there is courage when you attack major problems, even if it's inconvenient. And I think that's something to really, really consider. I mean, keep that with you as the full moon approaches, right? There is courage in attacking big problems at the cost of minor inconveniences or even minor well-being. Sometimes, what is personally beneficial to us is not really as important as solving some of these bigger problems. And if we have the capacity to look at those situations through a different lens, maybe through the lens of something less it really is exemplified, I think, in the actual Sabian symbol of the full moon itself in Sagittarius, which is a child and a dog wearing borrowed glasses, right? And so the idea is that you're using imagination and you're using make-believe and anticipating higher stages of development. And realizing that there really is no demarcation between the higher and lower aspects of who we are, right? And I don't want to say it's an illusion, but it is part of living in a dualistic density, right? So we're in third dimension, third density. Part of the way that we navigate this realm is by being able to navigate duality in order to alchemize that and create something new, which is the Sagittarius energy. So there is an exceptional skill in the analysis of personal opportunity throughout the many dimensions of experience, right? And so, yes, you have this back and forth, and it can feel wonky and tumultuous, as I've said many times. But what it is highlighting is the opportunity to analyze how this contention actually can be synthesized into something that provides an opportunity. And there's a sense of innocence with the child, and there is a very Cancerian energy with the dog, right? I mean, the dog star Sirius is currently in the zodiac sign of Cancer. And dogs, anybody who's ever had a dog and is familiar with dogs and canines, that they are the perfect empath, right? They are loyal to a fault almost. There is no rationality. There is no reason and logic. It's all feeling, and it's all empathic feeling with dogs, right? So there's something about the innocence and the empathy of these two images or characters in the Sabian symbol wearing borrowed glasses. It suggests to me that not only imagination and make-believe, kind of fake it till you make it, it's more about wearing the glasses of of an adult, right? Of someone who has the lens of maturity, right? Of the capacity to synthesize rather than get caught up in the demarcation of this side or that side. We can't get there until we experience it in real time of this side or that side. Now, personally, as a person, that's got their popcorn out and just kind of watching this whole show unfold, I find it very interesting that the cognitive dissonance is very real for people that maybe, had a lot of negative feelings about everything that Elon Musk was doing with Doge and all the characterizations about him because of that. And now, because he's on the outs publicly with President Trump, very publicly on social media and the back and forth constantly, what do you do with that, right? Wait a minute, I thought I hated this person, but I also hate Trump. I'm not saying that's how I feel. I'm characterizing how this cognitive dissonance might be experienced. I don't know. I'm personally just like, oh, this is quite interesting. I'm just sitting back and watching it all, right? Eating my popcorn. But we need this, and this is happening, I think, as I said many times, is a manifestation of the energetic template. We are witnessing it, and maybe some of us are experiencing it in our own personal lives because it has to happen this way, right? It has to happen in order to get to that alchemy, that transformation of the Sagittarius energy, that bigger picture that it represents, a new perspective, a synthesis of these two perspectives. In order to get there, we have to have this. Now, the negative side of both of these positions is very real. And the negative side of this degree of Sagittarius, 21 Sagittarius, is that our vision is distorted. And there's a self-defeating prejudice, right? That, the lens of those glasses is distorting our vision. And we can't see past our own tumult, right? That we can't get past the upheaval of the two positions radically changing. That's already presenting itself. And we have a whole week to go until 5 days, right? Until we get to a culmination point of this full moon. So that's one side of it. And the negative side of this sun in Gemini is bluster, right? It's not anything that's going to yield any results. It's just bluster, right? It's just futile ill will because we can't actually take our emotions out of the situation because we're not getting what we want. Right? We're not getting what we want. Instead of being able to see the big picture, we're just caught in not having what we want. And I want you to put a pin in that too, because that's very related to what I want to bring up in the charts we're going to look at. So the moon in Sagittarius ultimately is seeking a philosophical or an expansive understanding. And it's not something that's going to be... It's something that is going to be felt, something that maybe will come up subconsciously, right? Where is Sagittarius in your chart? That area of life is where this is going to be highlighted. Possibly approaching issues with a sense of idealism or optimism. Those are very Sagittarian themes, right? Especially the child and the dog. There's no pessimism yet necessarily. It is very idealistic and innocent when you're putting on those glasses, as those two energies are doing. Now, the sun in Gemini is highlighting something more immediate, something and very practical, right? That has to be addressed. And conflicts that need to be addressed, or we just have to assert ideas, right? Instead of sitting on them, they need to come out. And so, of course, all this Gemini energy, especially right now, before we even get to this full moon with Jupiter and Mercury, right, representing Gemini and Sagittarius, I mean, we can't not express ourselves. I feel like that's something that's coming out as well. And strangely enough, when I was on X, I do follow Randy Quaid's X account because I find it entertaining. I mean, he's a comedian, he's a comedic actor, and he really got a raw deal from Hollywood, if you know anything about his story. But I do I do appreciate his X account for the comedic value, of course. And one of the things he actually said that I saw today, which I really was just like, yeah, he was like, you know what? I really respect the fact that these two people are just letting their disdain for each other be open and honest and out on the surface. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, maybe it's always been like this. And now it just has to come out because they've reached an impasse, right? Obviously, there's things we don't know. Like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I know what's going on because I don't. Anybody that's telling you they do is full of it. I'm sorry. Nobody really knows except the people directly involved. And we don't know what, you know what I mean? We only know what's coming out on the internet, which is probably all mostly fake anyway. So, but again, teachable moment here with the astrology. So this full moon can manifest as what? A push-pull between exploring broader perspectives, which is the moon in Sagittarius, and dealing with something more urgent and detailed and contentious communication. Imagine that. It's a moment to balance something, there's a playfulness and a curiosity with the Sabian symbol of the full moon in Sagittarius. But we also need to address those serious concerns, right? And so we keep that type of innocence and that playfulness and that curiosity. That's also a very Gemini theme, but that curiosity is what leads to synthesis and broader understanding and an optimistic potential outcome here. I really feel like that there is renewal coming out of this. And so before we move on, I just want to share the universe's way of letting me know that today. Where are we here? So I'm going to share it with you real quick. So as I was out on my morning walk, I was thinking about all of this stuff and I was like, this is and just like going over it in my head of all the things that I know about these two charts and like really trying to let all the information settle in. And I was just like thinking about it. I was like, this is really interesting. I can't wait to let this really synthesize in itself. And I really wonder what the outcome of all of this really is. And at that moment, I saw, which is the first time I've seen this year, a goldfinch bird. Okay. Go right in front of me and land on a tree branch, like on the side of the path. And I was like, oh, well, that's important. So, and anybody that is, those types of synchronicities, those types of interactions are very poignant and should be paid attention to, especially if you are someone that is really fine-tuning your intuition and how God speaks to you. So the goldfinch came up, and I'll show you a picture of one because they're just so beautiful. And then I'm going to share with you just a little bit of what I found in terms of the meaning of the goldfinch, because it really said to me like, oh yeah, this is good. Like this is going to be hard, but what comes out of it is renewal. So I looked up, what's the spiritual meaning of a goldfinch? It symbolizes renewal, joy, and a connection to the spiritual path. It's often seen as a bearer of happiness, of prosperity, and spiritual ascension, representing the positive energy of change and embracing a better moment. I just thought that was perfect. And I feel I just feel very optimistic about where it's going, even though it seems like, whoa, what's happening? And I do feel like that's the case as well for just this time period in general, right? This time period of June into July, which is very contentious. There's no doubt about it. And if we've been paying attention, which, the people on this channel definitely have been, that we've been preparing for this time now for months and months and months, and now it's here. So strap in, right? And know that there is something really beautiful that is coming about, and there is renewal around the corner, but not without the difficult situations that kind of test our faith, right? And test our ability to trust and cooperate with life, right? Like I said from the beginning here with the new moon in Gemini, right? It's not enough to just have the well. We actually have to, turn the crank and put the bucket into the well in order to gather the water, right? We have to do some of the work. And I feel like the first quarter moon in Virgo is about that. We have to do the work, right? It's not enough to just have the well. So that's what we're working on right now. So let's start moving forward from this particular transit and look at some of the big things coming up ahead. And then we'll look at Elon and President Trump's chart and just give you a sense of like, whoa, this is so just woven into the cosmic thread here. So along with this full moon, which I think, again, is very positive, is that there is a sextile with Venus and Mercury. Now, remember what I said about Mercury being at the degree of the next new moon. It's not an easy degree. 5 degrees Cancer is not an easy degree. I'll just give you the preview now. It is about like, a car that's stalled on a railroad track. And the idea here is that, there are tragic results when the personal will tries to pit itself against the collective energies, because that is the nature of Cancer, right? Is that it's more than just the individual personality at this point. Once that root is established, it means that there's a community that we are part of now, a family that we're part of. And of course, the 4th house in Cancer is very much related to patriotism, nationalism, a sense of tribal and clan identity. Of course, that is the natal sun of the U.S. natal chart, or the U.S. chart. So it's something that is more than just the personality establishing itself. You start to become more. And, if you study plants at all, you know that once that root system is established, that plant becomes part of the ecosystem. It's no longer just its own entity, sprouting leaves and as a seedling, right? Once those roots are established, it's part of something more and has a symbiotic relationship. And if we're continuing to attempt to pit ourselves against the momentum of that, it can be tragic, right? It's just like, you jump out of the car because it's going to get smashed by that oncoming train. So that's going to be the nature of the next lunar cycle taking us into July. Can't wait. But this sextile with Venus, and by the way, Venus as of today has come home to Taurus. So that's that's actually really beneficial. I felt that today as well. Now, she can get kind of possessive in Taurus, right? She can get kind of lazy in Taurus, right? But it's the Empress in her fullness, right? Where she is kind of the Earth Mother in that way. And it's all about how she feels in her senses and beauty and harmony and a sense of real security here. Now, this sextile with Mercury and Venus suggest a very supportive alignment between emotional communication with Mercury in Cancer and a grounded, value-driven connection. This configuration really supports efforts to communicate. So I do feel like that the feud, once we hit the full moon, is then going to start finding a place where the communication can start to bridge a gap, so to speak, and build bridges towards stability and mutual understanding. It's an opportunity to express affection, negotiate agreements. Now, this, like I said, this is happening with the full moon. I think that this is very beneficial. I really like this, especially because the rest of the transits are going to be very difficult throughout the 2 weeks from full moon to new moon. And just as a reminder here, once we get to the full moon, it illuminates and clarifies our purpose, but we then have to consciously apply that as the light of the moon starts waning. And that can be really difficult to do because there's a certain amount of responsibility as a conscious person at that point to continue to clarify and fulfill our purpose. So there will be lots of tension coming up after this full moon. So that sextile is going to be really important to just really take advantage of, right? And sextiles are harmonious, but they require our participation. It's not going to be something that naturally just flows. It's going to be something that we have to participate in. We have to be willing to negotiate. We have to be willing to engage in that emotional and mutually beneficial communication, but it will be very supportive of that, okay? Now, as we start going through the difficult transits, We're coming into June 13th, all right? So, and the 14th is going to be a very loaded day, okay? Number one, the 14th is President Trump's solar return, right? It's where where his son returns back to his position at his birth, right? Number two is, and that's, that's not the primary thing. The primary thing is that it's Flag Day here in the U.S. and it's the 250th anniversary of the establishment, I believe, of the Army, and maybe it's the armed forces in general, but I think it might be the branch of the Army. I have to confirm that. But there's going to be a huge parade and celebration, I think, in D.C. on this day. So the thing is right before that happens, we have the sun in a T-square to the nodes of the moon, pretty much sitting on President Trump's natal sun at 23 degrees Gemini, okay? And when we look at our chart, I mean, he is a Gemini. You're not going to out Gemini this Gemini. I'm sorry. I mean, if I have to, say, who's going to really win out this feud, I mean, you're not going to out Gemini a Gemini. And he is a Mercury ruled person. And so his capacity to negotiate, his capacity to use logic and reason. And he not only has Sun in Gemini, but it's conjunct his North Node and Uranus in his 10th house. So, like I said, we'll look at that. You keep weaving it in as we're going along. But then you have this T-square with the nodes of the moon. And this is a pivotal moment, where all of us, our conscious identity is being challenged to evolve because at a soul level, because that's what the nodes of the moon represent. So, the Gemini sun's, energy of communication and curiosity is caught between the need to release some of this overly critical or controlled nature of Virgo, which is the South Node is in Virgo, and embrace something that's more intuitive, more spiritually connected, right? Which is where the Pisces North Node is. This is the trajectory of the soul at the moment here. And so you may feel torn, certainly within all of this information. Now, what's the ghost point? It's 23 degrees of Sagittarius, which is an interesting Sabian symbol and is got a lot of loaded energy. So just keep that in mind as I tell you what it is. 23 Sagittarius is immigrants entering a new country. The idea here is that we accept that there is a new stage that we're entering into. We're consciously accepting the new stage that we're entering into. We know we're coming from one place and entering a new place, and there is a drive to actually incorporate and assimilate into that new place. Okay, that's the 23 Gemini. So keep that in mind too. If you are feeling torn, you're feeling the friction of this square, because you might be torn between gathering information, maintaining order, which is the Virgo South Node, and trusting the flow of life. So maybe again, that optimism and that bigger picture perspective is, yes, we're leaving something behind consciously. We're moving into a new territory consciously, and we have all of our history that has made us who we are, but we have to step out of that and into the new territory as part of this journey. And that is the ghost point. And so, yeah, there is a pivotal moment of growth. There is going to be tension and some questions you may want to ask yourself at this moment. Are you clinging to familiar patterns, or are you overanalyzing things? Are you clinging to perfectionism? This is all this Virgo energy of the South Node. And how can you nurture your curiosity while trusting your intuition? I think that those are good questions that all of us can be asking ourselves. What would it look like to take a leap of faith, right? Like fledglings leaving the nest. And I actually I have a nest in the corner of my covered front porch, and there are 3 fledglings up there. And I took a picture, and for whatever reason, I can't get my phone to upload it to, or email it to myself, because I wanted to show it to you, but I can't. So you have to just take my word for it. But I have these 3 fledglings that are really outgrowing this nest. They're going to come out any moment. So it'd be interesting if they came out on the 13th of June. That would be quite the signal from the universe, wouldn't it? So That's the 13th, this T square that's really challenging us to let go of this perfectionism and overanalysis. Maybe they are familiar patterns, and the South Node certainly suggests that. And how do we move towards trusting our intuition and consciously doing it and taking that leap of faith without leaving everything behind, right? We don't completely leave behind where we've come from, but we consciously accept where we're going and our willingness to assimilate to that. That's the Sagittarian energy as well. Now, once we get past this, I mean, that's already a T square, but after this, it just gets really, really difficult, at least until, I mean, let's be honest here. I mean, Mars is going to come into Virgo, and it's just square upon square upon square until, oh my gosh, until really, oh my Lord, until we get to the 24th when the Sun and Jupiter are in a conjunction. So let's just look at this overall energy here because it's pretty substantial. So the 15th, another really substantial day here. Mars is going to, Mars in Leo, coming into conjunction with Regulus, right? The heart of the lion, Archangel Raphael. That's what it's, one of the royal fixed stars in Regulus is in the Leo constellation. It's going to square Uranus, okay? Mars squaring Uranus is impulsive, sudden willfulness, a craving for excitement, recklessness, sudden actions, all the things you can imagine with Mars in Leo, by the way, in a square to Uranus, which is erratic, okay? So there is going to be a very strong urge to break free from restrictions, rebel against authority, without regard for the consequences, right? It could really screw some things up. So please be aware of this. You're not going to restrain this energy, just saying. So find a way to express it constructively, right? Or having a creative outlet in some way. However, an original outlook may lead to breakthrough, but it's about avoiding the impulsive actions or taking dangerous risks. And Mars and Leo, I think at the last degree, the yearning for being able to come forward into something conscious and solid is going to really highlight this recklessness, right? If it isn't broken, don't fix it, right? That would be a really good piece of advice for this Mars square Uranus, okay? Again, a dynamic push-pull. There is so much of this energy in this lunar transit forecast of this dynamic push and pull, and in this case, between bold, creative self-assertion, which is Mars and Leo, and unexpected disruptions in practical material realms, which is Uranus in Taurus, okay? But I want to point something out, especially the degree that Uranus is sitting at, okay? We do not develop a mature perspective until we have both sides of a situation. And sometimes that comes about because there is an unexpected disruption in our material reality. But without that, we don't have the capacity or the ability to really see things fully. That mature perspective comes from being able to see both sides of a situation. It's just that Mars really wants to assert itself, and we want to assert ourselves in a very creative and dramatic way. And this square to Uranus is going to be a lot of potential conflict, frustration, especially with the desire for personal recognition, may be challenged by those very sudden changes or resistance in stable structures, finances, resources, values, right? There's a sense of urgency since we're at the end of the sign in these last degrees. So again, this is another critical turning point where unresolved energies will demand action or release. Here, that's the thing that really is going to be troubling here, is that you can't contain it. It needs to be resolved, but if you are not consciously aware of this energy and have a practice or an ability to channel it constructively, this is where the impulsiveness and the recklessness can really disrupt your life. So there is a moment where your drive our drive for personal transformation may clash with those unexpected shifts, right? So just be aware. And the challenge is to balance this out, right? Balance your individual spark with something practical, something cooperative, right? You want to integrate the change without it like completely destroying the structures of your life. Uranus is going to do that on its own anyway, right? But if we're, trying to, dramatically express ourselves and what we individually want, there's that personality expressing itself, and something radically shifts in our practical realm, then it's going to be difficult. Now, on top of that is the first, Mercury has already squared Saturn at this point, but Jupiter is going to square Saturn, as you can see here in Cancer and Aries. There's a lot of tension, right? Especially as you face a lack of opportunities, face criticism, limiting circumstances, right? Saturn is very limiting. And at 2 degrees Aries, the limitation is that we are forced to see things for what they are, right? The comedian that reveals human nature, right? The mirror that is placed up in terms of structure and authority that we may not think is very funny. You know what I mean? When a comedian, they really challenge people when they provide that mirror. Especially if we are attempting to expand our consciousness to a stable point of view at a higher level and we are forced to look in the mirror, this could be very difficult. And it could impair our judgment. So we may experience a lack of initiative. We may become slave to a routine. We may be so caught in the limitation of seeing things objectively in that moment with Saturn that we're unable to expand our consciousness to something that is much broader, right? Structures or long-held beliefs may break down, leaving you uncertain and unsure about your future. Any area of your life that gets out of control or creates this tension will require extra attention. Now, you see how difficult this is going to be with Mars square Uranus at the same time. So events may force you to reassess previously held strong beliefs. Oh, boy. I mean, we're all going to go through this. It doesn't matter how awake you think you are. We're all going to go through this. I was listening to something yesterday, and that person was referencing something Terence McKenna had said, which was that it's going to get weirder than we can even imagine. And I think that is the truth. So it doesn't matter how awake you think you are. I think we're all going to go through something that is going to force us to reassess our previously held strong beliefs. But destructive behavior patterns can really end because of those previously held strong beliefs being reassessed. And it's going to be hard, right? We know this, right? The spiritual awakening process often leaves a vacuum in your life, and you're just kind of like, you just withdraw, right? You just lose all impetus to do anything because you're like, it's all been a lie. Right? It's hard. And there is a big wave of this coming for people. Okay. There is. And it's going to be a struggle. But once people have gone through this stage, there'll be so many opportunities to fill that void. And that's where the goldfinch really comes in. There'll be, and the activities that allow you to express your creative side, bring more satisfaction. Okay. So long-term problems are going to reach a crisis point, and there's going to be frustration. There's going to be uncertainty. The next stage is a struggle, and it requires hard work and patience. That's the Saturn energy. And I would say the hard work and patience is going to really come from the ability to just sit with what you are objectively looking at, right? But the next stage is where all that hard work and determination pays off. Now, I think that that's going to be a lot more to do with the Saturn retrograde. That's just my opinion, where we have to turn that mirror into ourselves and really do that work. I think that's going to be hard too, but I think that's where that hard work is going to start paying off. Ultimately, this is a clash and can manifest as tension between discipline and realism, which is Saturn and Aries, and taking responsibility for our actions and our identity. Whew, man, there's just going to be a big wave of normies waking up. I mean, I'm just, no disrespect to people who you would consider a normie. And like I said, we're all going to do it on our own level, but I do anticipate there's going to be a big wave of this coming with people who are not awake yet. or not even remotely awake. And there's a need to confront these limitations. So, but it pushes us to grow through overcoming the obstacles, right? We have to balance our idealism with practicality, and emotional insight and self-awareness is going to be necessary to navigate this. Absolutely. Now, there is one moment here of possible healing being facilitated with the sun in these last degrees of Gemini, and that's a sextile with Chiron on June 17th. So we still haven't gotten to the solstice quite yet, right? But this sextile with the sun and Chiron is a good moment here with all of this crap happening. It does suggest a moment where communication can facilitate healing. And not only that, but a willingness to kind of emerge from where we have kind of been sequestered and coming back out, right? And so communication, and communication that allows for a lost opportunity to be regained, which I think with Chiron sitting here, I think that's the wound that we'll never be able to establish, we'll never be able to achieve our desires, right? All that potentiality has nowhere to go. That's the wound of Chiron. This sextile is a really powerful opportunity to heal that wound, right? And through a willingness to come out and talk, through, like I said, to come out from where we're sequestered and really just put ourselves out there. And leveraging communication and imagination and intellectual insight, you might find yourself emerging from a period of retreat, like I said, or self-doubt into a space where you can actually articulate your truth or reclaim your agency through something creative, or just mentally reframing the whole thing. This can involve involve writing and speaking, engaging in dialogue. However it happens, it's a process that allows you to work on healing these past hurts and move forward with something renewed, right? So there is a glimmer of hope here, but with all sextiles, we have to participate, right? It's not just going to fall into our lap, but it will be supported if we engage with this process. And it does require that we kind of come out, we emerge from a period of self-doubt or that reclusiveness or that sequestering. Now, the third quarter moon is coming right after this. So back to this crisis moment, like I said. And the moon not only is going to square the sun, but it's going to meet the north node. And then Jupiter is going to square Neptune. So the squares continue. And this is a test of faith through disappointment in a lot of cases, right? And maybe we've been too trusting. Maybe we've over-idealized a situation. Maybe we thought the situation that we felt identified with, which is Neptune and Aries, we find that reality is shattered, right? Or the illusion, I should say, is shattered by the reality of the situation. It's going to test our will. That's all there is to it. And it says this is a terrible time for being overly optimistic. I'm not saying that it's a terrible time to be optimistic, especially with the nature of the full moon in Sagittarius. Overly optimistic, right? There is risk of delusion if we are being too trusting and generous here with this square of Jupiter and Neptune. And it's normal to feel suspicious during a transit like this, right? So you definitely want to give it credence, but maybe not too much. You know what I mean? And again, more dynamic tension between emotional expansion, which is Jupiter in Cancer, and idealistic vision, which is Neptune in Aries, right? And so when we over-idealize home, family, emotional security, with unrealistic ambitions or escapist tendencies. That's the Neptune in Aries, right? And again, the retrograde of Neptune in Aries, which is coming very soon in early July, or maybe the very end of June, I can't remember. That's the fog's going to clear on that. That's going to be hard. But regardless, there's going to be confusion, disappointment, misplaced trust if expectations are not grounded. I think the best part about this Jupiter at 3 degrees Cancer is that we can reasonably assume here that there is a testing of the will. we might have overcommitted to nurturing others at the expense of our own identity, or pursue a grand vision that lacks emotional grounding. So the testing of the will here with Jupiter in Cancer might force us into emotionally grounding, if that makes sense. Like, are we sure that this is what we want to commit to? Because this square is going to bring it up. And, the moon in a square, third quarter square to the sun, right, is always a crisis in consciousness. And that's when we'll be doing the next energy reading for the Catalyst membership. So again, if you're interested in that, you may want to sign up so you can get the intuitive energy reading for that time period and have a good check-in about what's going on and give some insight and some guidance when we get to these points. Now, Mars moves into Virgo, and then we have the solstice, and there's so many quincunxes. The sun's going to square Saturn. It just continues, guys. And certainly we're going to talk a lot more about this in the forecast itself for the season, right? The seasonal forecast. There's a yod that I want to bring up. So we'll go through this. Now, Mars coming into Virgo, I think, is going to give us some patience and some discipline here with an energy of Mars that doesn't have any patience or discipline. So that's a good thing, I think. It might be, this might be where Mars gets overly critical and kind of meticulous and perfectionist, but I think it's actually going to be a good thing to give us something to work towards and to kind of focus on, right? It's one thing to be very dramatic and to really have that passion want to be outputted somewhere. It's another entirely to take that energy and put ourselves into a practice, into a discipline. And that's going to, I think, be really valuable personally. It's certainly going to be tested. You can see that it's going to quincunx Saturn and Neptune right away, which will require us to adjust ourselves. But I do overall think it's going to be a good thing. Now, Jupiter and Mars, both in these signs that are feminine, water sign and earth sign, they're both going to be in a quincunx to Pluto. We haven't really talked about Pluto much during this at all, but this is a yod, right? A finger of God or a finger of destiny, where these two are in a sextile with each other, but then they're each in this inconjunct with this point here. This is something that I think is really worth paying attention to, because this 4 degrees of Cancer is a cat arguing with a mouse. So we're still dealing with this justification of back and forth, right? Even though it's pretty settled what's happening here and the nature of the relationship, there's still the back and forth that is being characterized with this degree. So this yod indicates that there are practical efforts of Mars and Virgo, emotional expansion with Jupiter and Cancer must both pivot towards Pluto's transformational energy to resolve the tension, right? So again, finger of destiny. So it's kind of like a fated moment where you're really pushed to align your actions and growth with something larger, right? Pluto and Aquarius is much more about a collective experience. So the challenge lies in integrating the precision of Virgo and the emotional nurturing of Cancer with the revolutionary collective focus. So there's going to be that inner conflict, being torn between taking practical action and creating harmony and expanding emotionally or nurturing others, while we're confronting, especially with Pluto retrograde, okay, confronting deeper forces that demand a shift in perspective, or power dynamics. That's a very Pluto thing. Speaking of power dynamics and a cat arguing with a mouse, it suggests that we have to navigate situations where power imbalances are at play. And 4 degrees Aquarius, right? A Hindu yogi demonstrates his healing powers. There is a responsibility, a personal responsibility to use that energy towards healing and to offer it in some way, right? And those are power, those can be power, there can be power dynamics embedded in the situation where somebody is spiritually advanced, let's put it that way. But this is about being able not only to demonstrate them, but to demonstrate them in a way that actually serves the community. So but there are power imbalances at play, whether they're in relationships or family or in a community. And Pluto's influence is going to force us to confront these imbalances head on, either through introspection or unconventional solutions. But there is a transformation through adjustment coming through this Yod's energy that blends the Virgo practicality and the emotional insight with the transformation of Pluto in Aquarius. So, this could involve letting go of control, embracing an innovative solution or approach, or just rethinking our role in a larger context. I mean, again, knowing where Virgo and Cancer and Aquarius are really helps. Sun's going to quincunx Pluto at the same degree, but it's going to conjunct Jupiter before we come into the next new moon. And this is really important to consider here. And you can see that there's just a lot of energy happening as we come to the solstice and after. You can just look at the chart and you see how all these bold lines. So this conjunction here is what I want to focus on. And then we're going to move into the natal charts just to show it to you. This is, conjunctions are activations. So sometimes they can be a lot. And this particular conjunction could manifest as a period of heightened emotional expression, where confidence and generosity, which is a lot of Jupiter, meets sensitivity and intuition, right? The sun in Cancer. The imagery, though, the cat and the mouse warns of things like potential manipulation, one-sided debates, and it really urges caution in how power is wielded in relationships and negotiations, okay? And I would say that the Yod beforehand is going to be really important in terms of really identifying those power dynamics, so that when we get to this point and we get to this conjunction, which, in its basic sense gives a real general feeling of well-being and happiness and optimism. And in the sign of Cancer, it's very nurturing. We feel very secure emotionally, a sense of belonging. This is a period of good luck. And seen as an opportunity for growth. Absolutely. And it's a really great time to start something new. And I say again, to explore these power dynamics and to maybe establish new power dynamics that are more balanced, right? And we just don't want to get too caught up in it, right? Jupiter's tendency towards growth and expansion can apply to negative character traits such as boastfulness and greed. Remaining conscious of this potential for extravagance and waste will allow thoughtfulness and moderation to ensure you make the most of this. Ultimately, I think that this is very positive, but it depends on the manipulation and the one-sided nature of the Cancer energy, with the cat arguing with the mouse. So reflect on areas where you are seeking to expand emotional connections or assert influence. Are you the cat or the mouse? Is the interaction fair? Because you're going to expand on it, whatever it is. So it's not a across the board positive type of conjunction. It can be, but I also feel like if we don't address those power dynamics from that Yod with Pluto, with Mars and Jupiter, and we don't have some sort of practical place to put our energy, then this conjunction with these two is going to potentially activate something that is, like I said, is more manipulative and one-sided, and potentially keep those power dynamics out of balance. So that's something to really look out for as well. So then we're going to come, and believe me, when we come into the new moon right after that, the tone for that and into July is really going to be like, if you try to pit yourself against the will of the collective, and that's what Pluto and Aquarius, I think that's going to be really important to really check in with. Then there's going to be disastrous effects. That's just all there is to it. Okay, the moment we've all been waiting for, folks. Let's look at the charts of the feud, the dueling banjos, so to speak. All right. So let's share here. And I don't know if I actually even had the chart up. Sorry, guys. Most of you are probably already listening anyway, so it doesn't really matter, but my apologies if there was no visual for you to look at. Okay, now we're looking at President Trump's natal chart. And like I said, we have his birth time, so it's very accurate in terms of his house cusps and everything else. We are using a Placidus house system, and we are using tropical astrology. So I know we're kind of getting long in the tooth here. So I will keep this very brief, just to show you what this, how this is written in, baked into the cake, so to speak. The big thing I want to show you on his chart is the fact that this full moon is on the cusp of his own natal sun-moon configuration. It's actually right on his lunar nodal axis, the full moon. As you can see here in his 10th and 4th house, he has a moon in his 4th house, right? So, I mean, his sensitivity to matters of home and personal power is very deep. And he was born in a full moon lunar eclipse at this degree, essentially, right? So now the full moon is going to be not eclipsed. And so these power dynamics for him are going to be highlighted big time. And not to mention the fact that he has Uranus conjunct Rigel. So the sun is sitting on his natal Uranus right now and will be tomorrow as well. And so in his public, his realm of his public life. And I'll tell you what, he just flipped the script on, those who he identifies as his comrades, right? That's pretty obvious. So you can't really predict what he's going to do with Sun, North Node, and Uranus in Gemini in the 10th house, okay? So that's one thing that I want to show in his particular chart. He does have Mercury in Cancer. He is a Mercury-ruled person with a Sun in Gemini. We also look at the ruling planet of the sign of the North Node to get an idea of how the soul can more easily move in that direction. So you would also look at Mercury in Cancer. And in his 11th house, right? I mean, communication in terms of his associates and his social, the social organism as a whole. I mean, I do feel like that there is that nurturing, kind of emotionally driven quality to his speech ultimately. And so I do feel like this is where the resolution is going to come when things kind of move into Cancer season. Now, let's look at Mr. Musk's chart. And there's a couple things that come up for me, at least, about this chart that I want to bring up. He also is a Mercury in Cancer person. In fact, his natal Mercury is conjunct Sirius, so there is all kinds of starseed implications for both of these individuals. He does also have a Sun in Cancer, which is conjunct the Mercury for President Trump. So they will eventually come to some sort of, they will come back and talk. It will happen. I mean, even though right now they're saying they're not interested, that's part of the Gemini energy. Once we get to the full moon and once we start moving more into Cancer season, which is not going to be long from now, they will come into a conversation and it will be less contentious and more focused on emotional expression and, what's based on feeling. Now, of course, like I said, Elon Musk being a Cancer sun, his moon is ruling his ruling body as opposed to President Trump. Mercury is his ruling body. So I still think that ultimately he's going to come out on top in terms of the way he negotiates, how he communicates. There's just, I think that the petulance is coming more from Elon Musk personally, based on what I'm looking at. Now, the other thing that is worth looking at here is the fact that his natal Mars is in Aquarius, whereas President Trump's natal Mars is in Leo, and they're opposite of each other, and Mars is in Leo right now. So there is a tension just for Elon Musk in general with Mars in Leo opposite his natal Mars that is really bringing up these themes about his own personal self-expression versus his personal energy and initiative being directed towards something more collective. And I'll tell you what, 21 degrees Aquarius is not an easy symbol. It is not an easy position. A disappointed and disillusioned woman courageously faces a seemingly empty life. Okay? He's really having a hard time right now, I think, in terms of the projection of his identity, his desires, and his potentiality. I think it's not very easy for him right now. And I'm not supporting him, or I'm just pointing it out. The other thing is, too, let's be honest here, the South Node has been pretty much sitting on his natal Pluto. Pluto is the soul's power in the chart, and to have the South Node here in Virgo, I mean, the first thing I thought of about this, I was like, this is a person who is used to getting what he wants, is used to being overly critical and highly focused, and his power comes from his ability to wield power. His power at a soul level is related to this perfectionism and this meticulousness and control. And considering the fact that this is where the South Node is and has been here for a while now and will continue to be in conjunction with his Pluto, he is really struggling with not being able to default back to where his power usually comes from. That feels pretty clear to me too. So he's really going through his own process of having to trust the bigger picture here and trust the flow, as opposed to defaulting back to what he knows and what he already has established at a soul level, what his power is, right? He has to kind of pull up his big boy pants and do what's best for the collective, even if he feels like he's not getting what he wants. And I see this a lot in where his natal Pluto is, and certainly where the South Node is sitting right now. So again, these two individuals are being strongly aspected by this astrology, and their interactions with each other are highlighting all of these dynamics. It will come to, they will come back and talk to each other. They will. There will be a healing. There will be a renewal. There will be a conversation for the good of everything. And, Elon's just going to have to let go of what he thinks that he wants. Because I do feel like that he's going to have to face his own disappointment and disillusionment in order to really be, to fulfill his own destiny, which is his North Node, which is the big businessman sitting at a desk, right? I mean, he has a lot to learn, I think, from President Trump in terms of this. And yes, he's been very successful. He has all of these businesses. But the reality is that, he is used to getting his way, and he's not right now. And, it was all well and good when he was getting a lot of accolades and positive attention for Doge, but now that he is personally having to maybe give something up in the face of something that is better for what we're going. And I'm not here to say what's better or not in terms of the economics. I'm pointing out the astrology. And this is a person who's not used to not getting his way, and he's learning to trust. He's going to have to learn to trust the flow of the universe and really give it up to God, honestly. Because I just don't feel like that's something that he has done, right? Whereas I think that's exactly what President Trump is learning right now. It has been for a number of years, and he has openly expressed it in the things that he said. So there you have it, my friends. That's going to do it for this full moon forecast, right? So incredible examples of the cosmic template just showing itself out here for all of us to enjoy and to behold, right? If you are interested in your own personal reading, you can certainly go to my website and look at all the services I have to offer. Membership is available there as well, and you can get those 2 energy readings, 1 or 2, depending on where you sign up, your own discount code, and of course, your own personal seasonal forecast that's coming up for the upcoming solstice. All of those things are available. Please let me know if you need anything. And of course, as always, thank you for being here. I really appreciate all of you so much. Thanks for sticking with me for this long form content here on whatever platform you are watching or listening on. Thank you so much. And for those of you who are members, I'll see you in a week for our energy reading. And if not, I'll see you all on the solstice, right? When I put the forecast up publicly for that. So take care, everyone. Take care of each other the best you can. Take a deep breath. Lean into Gemini right now. It's the way that we come to a synthesis of the struggles and the contention. And just, if you're having a hard time, put it in the hands of God, because ultimately that's who's in charge. So take care, everyone. Ciao.